So we're looking at somewhere between 150 to 200 million people, a very, very significant section of the population, which often is poor, vulnerable, and marginalized in many of our countries that we work with. What we see is that the prevention and control measures, especially on the movement of both inputs as well as workers, cause several supply side and demand side disruptions. In countries such as Bangladesh, Cambodia, and others, low-income countries, many survey respondents had reported fewer meals consumed by fishing communities, particularly women and children.
Kadang-kadang bisa kami mengambil sedikit ada simpanan di bank untuk persiapan anak sekolah.
10 কেজি চাইল আজ 7 দিন আমরা আলাপ করে আনছি একজনের তেল আইনা আজ 7 দিন খাইছি কালকে যে বাতার ফাতিল পার করে দিমু এমন কোনো আমগো লক্ষণ নাই
แล้วก็มันหลายๆเรื่องจากการทำมาหากินจากที่ว่าเราต้องมาเสี่ยงกับโควิดที่ว่าใกล้ตัวเราต้องกักตัวต้องอะไรประมาณนี้คือทุกคนเดือดร้อนกันหมด
Only the social protection programs work for the organized sector, not for the resource dependent communities. Most of the nation doesn't recognize them as fish workers.
45 நாள் வரையில அது தர மாட்டாங்க பொதுவா ஆம்பளை இருக்கிற வீட்ல கொடுப்பாங்க ஆம்பளை இல்லாத வீட்ல பெண்கள் இருக்கறாங்களே இப்ப நானே எங்க அம்மா அந்த மாதிரி வீட்ல தர மாட்டாங்க
dahil sa lockdown na to nagsitawagan ng mga mangingisda bilang isang leader kailangan ko silang sagutin ma'am ano ba to bakit ganito bakit pati kami pinagbabawalan mangisda
Every disaster teaches a lesson.
We need global, national, and community-based initiative. We need to provide financial access to the small-scale fisheries. We need to provide a market mechanism to the small-scale fisheries, and we need to have a national social safety net, especially for the small-scale fishermen, also with a contingency plan.
I can say support us not only in a way of giving food, but also in showing us as a frontliner and having a more responsible and good protector of our major source of income.
Very much for watching it. This SSF Hub presents webinars, and these kind of videos will continue throughout 2022, just in support and of elevating the voices of fishers and demonstrating the importance of the sector ahead of the IAFA year, the International Year of Artisanal Fisheries and Aquaculture next year. Next, we will move to the panel session. And you can watch this video again on in the SSF Hub YouTube and the SSF Hub channel, and there will be there are more videos there, including some videos from our speakers that we have here today, and they're more detailed and longer. So please go online and check the videos. If any of you has stories on the impact of COVID-19 on your fishery and on your communities, and what measures you've implemented to mitigate these impacts, we also would be very happy to know about that. So please just do a short video. It can be done with your mobile phones and send it to us, and we'll edit it and put it online. So now let's move to the panel discussion following this. I will invite the 6 speakers that we have to share their experiences with the pandemic, how it has affected their livelihoods and supply chains, and to hear about the ways they have adapted to cope with the situation. We will take a few questions from the audience after the speakers, the speakers share their experiences. So if you would like to put any questions, please write on the chat, and we will target them afterwards. Once again, as a reminder, we'll be switching languages to accommodate for the speakers. So I ask for your patience during this time, as the interpreters need to be switching from, need to be translating. Please welcome our speakers. Not sure if everyone is already here, but I think so. We will have Don German, which is from the Fishers Roundtable in Honduras. Maritza, no, yes.
Maritza, ¿sí está?
Maritza Martinez, yes, the president of the Association of the Pescadores de la Rosita, Cuero y Salados, APROCUS, from Honduras as well. Ben Martins, the executive director of the Maine Coast Fishermen Association, an industry-led nonprofit that works on behalf of the community-based fishermen of Maine in the USA. Ben works with Maine's community-based fishermen to develop projects, policies, and ideas to strengthen Maine fisheries. Tracy Sylvester, the co-founder of Wooden Island Wild in Alaska, USA. Tracy has been working in fisheries science and sustainable fishing in Alaska for over a decade. She holds a degree in fisheries biology and management from the University of Vermont Rubinstein School of Environment and Natural Resources. Then we have also Paula Leiva, the head of Micayeta, a foundation from Chile that connects artisanal fishing communities with citizens. The Micayeta works collaboratively to offer quality seafood at fair prices. And René Jara Diaz, a fisherman and founding member of the Dual Fishermen Cooperative in Chile. He adds value to his fish through his own seafood processing plants. So I would like to remind all the panelists to keep their stories to 7-8 minutes, letting us know about their experiences and how it affected their livelihoods and the way they've adopted to cope with the situation. I'm sorry for the short amount of time, but it's a large number of panelists. And unfortunately, in order to hear from all of you, we have these 7-8 minutes. So I would invite to start Don to put this video on, and we'll start with Don, followed by Maritza, and get to know about their experience in Honduras. Is Don already here?
Don Germán, por problemas de internet, no logró entrar, pero Maritza sí está acá.
Yes, exactly. Let's move on then to Maritza, please. And if Don does come in later, please let me know, and I'll move back to him, or I'll talk to him at the end. Hello, Maritza.
Buenos días. Buenos días. La experiencia.
Yes, do you want us to tell a bit about your experience?
Ok. En la experiencia en el sistema de la pesca es que dicen o de lo que hemos tenido o cerca del COVID. Quiere que comparta mi experiencia que hemos tenido nosotros como pescadores. Ok. La experiencia nosotros como pescadores que hemos tenido, pues, y siempre sobre todas las cosas que están ahorita ocurriendo, ¿va? Sobre la pandemia, estamos siempre saliendo adelante. Hemos tenido muchas experiencias buenas, malas y bastantes complicaciones para poder salir, y la experiencia buena que hemos tenido nosotros, entre nosotros aquí, acerca de la pesca, acerca de las ayudas que nos han dado, acerca de todo lo que hemos alcanzado, por ahorita va caminando muy bien, porque cuando nosotros los han ayudado en el sistema de las ayudas que nos han dado, nosotros hemos montado un restaurante ahí que los estamos saliendo adelante, y eso los está yendo muy bien. Y para ayudarlos nosotros mismos los pescadores, y asimismo a la comunidad también, para ayudar a la otra familia. Y de las pescas, sobre la pesca, también hemos tenido bastante una experiencia en este momento de cómo los está yendo para sacar nuestro producto, para que salga nuestro producto de aquí. En el sistema, como fue quitado nuestro tren, nuestro transporte de vía que nosotros podíamos salir, entonces esa es una parte de las complicaciones que hemos tenido acerca de eso, porque es triste para nosotros, porque nosotros no podemos
I think Maritza seems to be having some internet difficulties.
Sí, lo que pasa es que estamos teniendo mal tiempo en Honduras, entonces la conexión de internet está bastante mal, y están en área protegida, todavía ya es más complicado. Lo sentimos.
I know, while we wait, maybe Maritza come back. I don't know if we lost her completely. I know that they had some problems with transportation, with the blocking of the train. This means of the main means of transportation that they used to take the fish out of the community having stopped and not having restarted again, but they adapted to that, and they are they've created a restaurant, and they are selling the products more locally. I'm not sure if she's back on to tell a bit more of what happened. And so we already know a bit of the challenge and the measures, and if they would like to continue some of these things going forward. I can also just, she's not back on online yet. So I can move to the US, hopefully nice weather with Ben, and move a bit to Ben so that he can tell us about what challenges they faced in Maine, and what adaptation measures they've put in place, which I know that you've put some very interesting things in place, and what support you kind of need to moving forward. And I'll come back to Honduras later if they manage to get back online. Sorry about that.
Okay, perfect. I'm happy to talk, and I will try. So thank you guys. My name is Ben Martens, and I'm the executive director of the Maine Coast Fishermen's Association. I am not a fisherman. I work on behalf of a group of fishermen along the coast of Maine who fish for a variety of species like groundfish, like cod, haddock, and flounders, scallops, lobsters, bait fish as well. So we have a tuna. We have a wide variety of species that we catch in Maine. We're really known for our lobster, obviously, but our organization mostly focuses on the fisheries that are not lobster in our state, to try and help build more diverse fishing businesses and a diverse fishing future for the small boat fleet in Maine. So we've been doing mostly our work as an organization has been focused on fisheries policy and research projects to build more sustainable fishing future. And so that means bringing accountability into different fisheries, particularly the groundfish fishery in Maine, and in New England, looking at getting better data into our stock assessments, and then helping support the fishermen as they're investing in building businesses, preserving access through working waterfront, et cetera. So a lot of really on the ground fishing focused activities that have been our bread and butter, our mission for the past 10 or so years that we've been working here in Maine. And obviously, when COVID hit, we had to throw all that out into the ocean and be done with it for a little while. The crisis hit pretty quickly in the state of Maine. We have an annual event in Maine called the Maine Fishermen's Forum that's usually the last week of February, and that was right as COVID was starting to hit the United States, and we were starting to hear some different rumblings about what it might mean, but we didn't know. And it was really the last big gathering that most of us went to. But I was able to kind of pretty quickly understand that this was a big deal when I was talking to lobster dealers that were trying to move product around the globe. And they're like, basically, Asian companies are being shut down, right? And so I left that event, and most of us were not thinking that this was going to be a long-term issue. But as soon as the supply chain overseas started to crumble, we came back and we started working with our staff to think about ways that we could support our fishermen and fishing communities of Maine if things took a turn for the worse. Unfortunately, it took a turn for the much, much worse, and we were not ready to deal with all the implications of that. But one of the things that we did as an organization early on was realize that when our food chain in New England got disrupted and our shelves were empty, I got more phone calls from community members looking for fresh fish and seafood as a protein source than I'd had in the previous 10 years of working in Maine. And so we had a lot of people that were now looking for direct from fishermen products. Like lobsters or scallops or groundfish, whatever was coming across the docks, people were interested in. And it wasn't just because they were trying to support the local fishermen. There were definitely people that were doing that, but it was really because the initial output was because our shelves were empty. We didn't have chicken, we didn't have beef, we didn't have pork. Those things were being held up when supply chains crumbled in the Midwest and throughout the United States. And so we saw that as an opportunity. We set up some different venues, vehicles through online like Facebook and through our website to basically say, hey, fishermen, your prices have disappeared and we've got consumers that want these different products. How can we connect you guys? How can we allow for folks to come together and move products around? And it was great. A lot of fishermen really enjoyed it. And there were a lot of consumers that really enjoyed it. But it was also a Band-Aid, right? Like we land thousands and thousands of pounds of different species weekly in Maine that just the local markets can't consume. And so there was a lot of fishermen that just tied up at the docks and they stopped going fishing. And that had a real impact throughout our communities. We were pretty lucky though in Maine because shortly after COVID kind of started rolling out and then we moved into summer, some of the species like scallops and lobsters, their price stabilized. What we saw though was that for species like brownfish in particular, so those cod, those haddock, those flounder, in Maine, we have mostly smaller boats that catch those species. Our market had always been restaurants. And so the restaurants got shut down and seafood, those restaurants that did persist and start doing takeout, seafood was just not something that people were interested in doing takeout with. And so our markets completely collapsed for those white flaky fish that we land in Maine. And that's been where we've spent a lot of our time as an organization, really focusing on that fishery and sustaining that fishery. So when that happened, we started to figure out what we could do. What was the problems? We literally had boats going out, catching fish, landing fish, and being told when they got to shore that there was no market for that fish to be sold into. At the same time, food insecurity in our state was spiking. And so Maine is already a pretty food insecure state. It's the most food insecure state in New England. And we were seeing more and more people not able to get local food, not able to feed their families. And the hardest thing to come by was protein and healthy protein. So when we kind of started seeing all these things coming together, we started some conversations with some foundations and friends on the larger scale and set up a pilot project that we called Fishermen Feeding Mainers. And so we got a small grant and we went out and we basically told fishermen that if they went out fishing, a percentage of their catch we would buy at a fair price. We would pay local processors to process it, and then we would donate that into local food insecure populations in Maine. And it was a nightmare to set up because it's really hard to coordinate the movement of seafood in the United States. We don't have a lot of local processing. We don't have a lot of local infrastructure. Majority of fish in the state of Maine, when we're landing those flaky whitefish, they get landed, they get sold at auction, and then they get moved out of our state to Massachusetts or New York or Chicago. So we really had to start building partners locally. And once we showed that there was a proof of concept here that was important, we were able to then start buying from fishermen. And over the past year, we've supplied over 300,000 meals of fresh local seafood to those in need in our state. We've gotten it to not just food pantries and food banks, but we also, because we've been giving it away, we were really able to open up our doors and say, all right, we have a product. Who needs it? And there was a lot of different groups in Maine that sit outside of the normal distribution chain when it comes to food security. And so whether they're new Americans, first generation Americans, first Americans, or whatnot, we were really able to help connect. And we basically we said, come to us, we'll give you fish. What do you need? And it was a great way to build community. It was a great way to support the fishermen and feed people. And so we've been able to go out and continue this project with some donations from individuals in our communities. Foundations have been paramount in making sure that this is a success. And we've been able to receive some COVID relief money as well. And as the final piece of this that is really kind of an interesting piece of what we've been learning and seeing is two opportunities, right? So COVID is it's a dark cloud, but we're trying to find that silver lining within it. And so the two pieces that we're kind of taking out of this is, one is we've really been able to help fishermen by stabilizing price and having a market that we were able to say, if you want to go fishing, a percentage of your fish, we will be able to buy, and we can tell you before you leave the dock what you're going to get paid. And we can't do that with all the fish that are coming across, but even just having that little piece of security was incredibly valuable. And so we've got new fishermen that are starting to fish in Maine on some of these species for the first time because of the stability around this program. And then the other side of it is, because we are now dealing with down supply chains and down market issues, we've realized that when we talk about seafood, we often aren't talking to the right people. In the United States, we try and sell seafood to, white women, and we're trying to get the United States to, consume, more than 16 pounds per person. But the folks that have really responded the most to our seafood in Maine have been a lot of minority communities, and a lot of new American communities. And so we're trying to figure out how to build markets and opportunities within those spaces. And the final little fun thing, and I'll leave it at that, is we also have a problem in the United States where people don't always know what to do with fish when they are given fish. And so we were giving all these folks fresh or fresh frozen seafood for the first time. Some of the species they were not familiar with, like flounders or monkfish in particular. And so we actually are just about to launch a new product, which is kind of an interesting thing for a nonprofit to do. But we had so many folks that were excited to get seafood, but then they got a monkfish and they didn't know how to cook it, that we built a stew. So we've got a monkfish stew that we are launching this month. It's a frozen product to not only for donation, but it was so good when we started, tasting it and trying it, that we're also going to be doing a product line to try and sell it locally to support the long-term sustainability of the project Fishermen Feeding Mainers. So I will pause there, and if there's more that people want to learn about on the other side, I'm happy to chat.
Really, really interesting, Ben. I do have just a little follow-up quickly. So it's a very interesting program what you've developed with the Fishers Feeding Mainers. Do you think this can continue after the COVID pandemic? I mean, we are going into a new wave, more cases of infection. So I assume right now it has still a place to stay, but potentially an economic crisis with people losing some purchasing power. Do you think this is a program that can continue in time? And what would it require to continue in time?
So we are really hoping that it can continue because it's been incredibly valuable for our fishermen, for our working waterfront, and for Mainers that don't often get good food and high quality food. So one of our big recipients of seafood has been the school system. So we've been donating seafood into schools in Maine. So to answer your question, yes, we want to keep it going. Right now, we are basically relying on foundations and individual donors to make this a reality. That's not sustainable for the long term. So we are hoping to set up longer term funding streams, and whether that is through products, whether that is through the state or federal money. But the biggest barrier that we run into is we are not competing with steak, right? Like, we have an expensive product. If we want to pay fishermen a fair price, if we want to pay processors a fair price, right? Even if you take the cost of the organization's work out of the equation, we are still talking about a pound of protein that is $6 or $7 per pound when it is donated. And we are competing with chicken that is coming in at less than $1, right? So that is the competition. And so a school system, when they say, oh, the meal for this child, we are allowed to spend $3 on this meal, right? For a donation, right? If you're saying this food bank, please buy some fish from us and help to keep this going, they say, we can't afford to buy at the fair price. We need to buy big streams of products. And so that's the biggest barrier right now, is that supporting small scale fishermen and the prices that they need for the good food. It's hard to set up a program to do that. We do have an opportunity in Maine, though. We passed the first in the nation law that gives free lunches to every student, regardless of their need in the state of Maine. And so we are starting to prioritize feeding people, and fish is really good food. So that's where our hope lies right now, is how we can kind of sustain the program moving forward.
Perfect. Thank you, Ben. Excellent program. I'm going to go back to try to get Maritza and Dawn to speak from Honduras. This is a good thing about doing events online, is that we reach more people. The downside of it is this kind of internet connections that fall, especially if you're in a place with bad weather, like it's happening right now in Honduras. Maritza, are you back? Can we go back to you, or Dawn, if they are here? Sí, Maritza? Hola. I see you there. Yes.
Hola.
Hola. You were talking about the challenges, and you identified some of the challenges that you faced with the stopping of the transportation, and also some of the adaptation measures you put in place, the creation of the restaurant. What did you do to deal with the problem of transportation that I know that still persists? You still don't have a train going to your community.
No, todavía no. Ese tren lo fue quitado y todavía tenemos problemas por eso. En el sistema también, mire, cuando ahora que los compradores, porque ya nosotros no muy fácil podemos salir a vender el pescado, entonces ellos entran a comprarlo. Y aún la gente que viene a comprar el pescado en Amoto han tenido problemas porque ya están hasta dado vuelta con su termos de pescado por el problema que han tenido por el transporte, porque no hay transporte. Para cuando estaba el transporte, ellos entraban de una sola vez, salían con su producto, nosotros salíamos con nuestro producto, no teníamos problema. Y ahora que fue quitado el transporte, el gran problema en el sistema por eso, porque aún hasta para cuando de repente nosotros vamos a ser mandados, tenemos bastante problema porque es más dinero el que pagamos. Y nosotros como pobres que somos, los está muy difícil, porque antes en el transporte era barato el pasaje, en el tren lo más que los cobraban a nosotros eran 20 lempiras. Ahora nosotros para poder salir tienen que ser 200 hasta 500 lempiras para poder salir de nuestra comunidad. Ahora lo sale más difícil y muy difícil. Y yo tengo una experiencia muy grande acerca de esto, lo que ha pasado en el COVID-19 de ahorita, acerca también de mi casa que se me fue quemada. Y por medio del transporte, que nosotros no tuvimos el transporte del tren porque fue quitado, los quitaron las ayudas a nosotros que los iban a ayudar por medio del transporte que hubo. Nosotros perdimos las ayudas. Ahora a nosotros nos está costando demasiado poder hacer despacio nuestra casa después de que cuando el transporte hubiera estado, nosotros ya tuviéramos levantada nuestra casa. Es difícil para nosotros ese punto, porque se los quemó todo, absolutamente quedar en nada solo con la ropa que nosotros andábamos. Entonces fue difícil y ahora a nuestros hijos, a nosotros nos está costando mucho levantar nuestra casa por ese punto, porque si el transporte hubiera estado, los bomberos hubieran llegado, los hubieran ayudado en muchas situaciones a nosotros. Y como no estuvo, bueno, no los pudieron ayudar, se los quemó todo lo que fue todo. Nuestros hijos y todos nosotros quedamos en la calle así mismo, solamente hicimos una media champa ahí por mientras nosotros estar haciendo nuestras casas de espacio, porque no pudimos así, porque el transporte lo hubiera traído de un solo nuestro material a nuestro hogar para hacer nuestra casa. Entonces, ahora despacito, esa es una de las experiencias tristes que hemos tenido por medio del transporte. Y ahora lo que estamos haciendo, que como ahora tenemos para poder entrar, tenemos lo que son burras, que la fundación nos está apoyando también a nosotros. La Fundación de Cuero y Salado los está apoyando en el sistema para meter nuestro material por la burra que hay. Entonces, así estamos logrando nosotros. Ahora nosotros, para poder viajar, nosotros estamos entrando en burra. Y una persona la está reempujando en la moto para poder entrar y salir. Porque para nuestro lugar de nosotros, venir salir hasta donde hay alimentos bastante, donde hay lo que nosotros necesitamos comprar, es bastante largo. Si no es por medio de una burra, por medio de la moto no se puede salir. Entonces sí necesitamos de repente pues, el tren. Por eso estamos bastante maniados y ese es bastante problema para nosotros. Como pescadores que somos, sí necesitamos de repente ese tren y sí estamos bastante mal en esa forma. Y para poderlos adaptar nosotros a la COVID-19, nosotros los han venido también a dar bastantes charlas. Hemos recibido charlas sobre de eso. Cómo podemos hacer, cómo podemos adaptarlo y poder adaptar a nuestros hijos para salir adelante en medio de esta pandemia. O sea que nosotros estamos viviendo unos momentos bastante difíciles en nuestro lugar. En cerca también para las de entrada de los niños de la escuela, también ese es otro de los problemas grandes para los niños que vienen acá por medio de ese transporte. Hay muchos niños que a un principio estaban perdiendo clases por la quitada de ese tren, porque más antes ese transporte pasaba recogiendo a los niños para traerlos a la escuela, para traerlos al colegio y todo eso. Entonces, los niños estaban perdiendo hasta que ahora se inventaron otra cosa, pero no hay como nosotros que debemos de tener el tren. Ese es el problema más grande que nosotros tenemos aquí. Ese. Y de cerca de nuestro negocio, de la cocina que nosotros tenemos ahorita, eso los está yendo, como se dice, muy bien. Y
I wanted to go back to, yes, this problem of COVID doesn't just affect fishing in itself, it affects the community as a whole and all other segments of life, like your family life and children. I wanted to go back a bit to your restaurant that you've created as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So you are selling products already transformed, so you're cooking and selling. You're also transporting.
Quería apoyar.
You're also transporting that to the surrounding communities or selling it just locally. And you think this is something that you could continue doing afterwards, something that you want to continue over time? And what would you need to be able to continue this into the future?
Ok. Nosotros lo que necesitamos, los pescadores necesitaríamos el transporte para nuestra comunidad. Eso es lo que nosotros necesitaríamos, ayuda para nosotros también, para poder comercializar el pescado y para poder hacer muchas cosas aquí. Esa es una de las cosas porque a nosotros nos afecta en el sistema del transporte, porque también cuando nosotros salimos a pescar para comprar el combustible, esa es una de las situaciones muy difíciles que tenemos, porque aún tenemos que pagar un buen dinero para que los puedan traer ese combustible de afuera. Y nosotros lo daña en ese sistema porque el combustible está caro y más dinero por otro lado, más que como nosotros con el transporte, nosotros no pagamos tanto. Entonces, porque el transporte se va uno a traer lo que uno necesita de combustible, regresa y rápido y barato. Nosotros a la verdad sí necesitamos y a la verdad que nosotros cuando vamos para que salimos para afuera en esos motos peligrosos, nosotros les demos vuelta de repente en andar en esos lugares, pues. Y pues es que en realidad necesitamos el transporte para continuar con nuestro proceso que nosotros para salir adelante. Y muchas ayudas que necesitaríamos para nosotros los pescadores también. Es lo que necesitamos.
Thank you. Thank you, Maritza. Thank you for sharing us what's happening in your community. I know that Dawn is not here, but Maria Ortega wanted to step in for Dawn and say a few things about the Fishers Roundtables on this topic. I'm sorry, Maria, maybe you want to introduce yourself. I don't have a way to introduce and just shortly and briefly just.
Hola, buenos días. Hola, buenas tardes.
Hola.
Buenos días, buenas noches. Mi nombre es María Arteaga y voy a ser bastante breve considerando lo del tiempo. Igual, muchísimas gracias por permitirme el espacio. Como mencionó Maritza, en Honduras se están teniendo bastantes problemas con aquello de lo que está relacionado a la pesca artesanal y para poder comercializar el producto. Yo trabajo como facilitadora de un proyecto a lo largo de 18 comunidades en las que los pescadores se dieron cuenta que necesitaban estar unidos para poder salir adelante. Por ello se creó una mesa de pescadores en la que don Germán es el presidente. Maritza es la presidenta de una asociación que está compuesta de 3 comunidades. Ellos, el mayor problema que presentaron, como ya lo dijo ella, es el acceso al área protegida para poder comercializar su producto. Esto con la intención de disminuir el contacto con las personas de afuera y evitar el contagio por COVID. Sin embargo, esto representó una quiebra en la parte económica, porque ya no podían venderlo, no podían hacer nada con él. Entonces los pescadores y los comunitarios, tanto en Cuero y Salado como afuera, se vieron afectados por esto. Unos por no poder acceder al producto y otros por no poder comercializarlo. Entonces, en conjunto, los comunitarios con las organizaciones que forman parte de esta zona, se buscaron alternativas para poder ingresar y comercializar. Entre ellas se creó, como a la falta del tren, una alternativa que le decimos la burra, es una carretita empujada por una moto y de esa forma entran a este tiempo, todavía no se dio habilitado. Y crearon un restaurante comunitario. Este restaurante comunitario está manejado por las mujeres de las comunidades en Cuero y Salado y al mismo tiempo le compran a los pescadores. Entonces, de esa forma encontraron una alternativa para mover la economía local. Entonces, es algo que consideran que va a seguir. se están consiguiendo más donaciones y más apoyo para ellas. Se están buscando entrenamientos para manejar lo que es procesos de bioseguridad por COVID, y de esa forma, al momento en que se aperture ya completamente el turismo hacia el área protegida, que también se vio afectado, ellos puedan ya comercializar a un mayor volumen de nuevo, y que este restaurantito comunitario, que se hizo beneficiado a los pescadores, las pescadoras y los otros miembros de la comunidad, se mantenga y crezca. Entonces, esa ha sido una de las alternativas. Y con la mesa de pescadores se ha buscado estudios como el Participatory Market System Development, en el que se están buscando alternativas para fortalecer la cadena de valor, encontrar dónde se tienen esos bloqueos y tratar de liberarlos. Esto lo están trabajando desde la Asociación de Pescadores, y es muy interesante porque antes ellos buscaban trabajar de manera separada, era algo bastante individualizado. Sin embargo, encontraron el poder en unirse y en formar una red de 18 comunidades representadas por pescadores de todas estas comunidades. Solamente
Maria,
eso. Gracias por el espacio.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you for stepping in for Dawn as well, like that, all of a sudden. Mindful of time, I will move on to Tracy, so that Tracy could let us know her experience, what's been happening in small-scale fisheries in Alaska.
Hello. So my name is Tracy Sylvester. I am a wild salmon fisherman from Sitka, Alaska. I grew up in the Boston area and moved to Alaska when I was 21 during college and started fishing in the summers. And so in November 2019, my family and I moved back to Massachusetts, thinking that we would be seasonal in Alaska and do some winter marketing of our fish. And so we started with one farmer's market, and we work with, I'm a member of a fisherman-owned cooperative. It's called Seafood Producers Cooperative, and it's based in the Pacific Northwest. Our main cold storage is in Bellingham, Washington, and most of our fishing happens up in Southeast Alaska. So our main fish plant is in Sitka. And so being a co-op member has been the most important part of my experience through COVID. We had originally thought maybe we would sell some of the fish that we catch on our boat, the Faithful. But as things have developed through the pandemic and I've been selling fish from my co-op, I'm realizing more and more how important the co-op is and how much I want to support it. Because I basically got stuck back here in New England. And when the pandemic started here in early March, my partner Jesse had just left for Alaska to do the halibut and black cod long lining that we also do. Usually we do that in the springtime, and we fish salmon in the summer. And we fish as a family with my two young kids. So traveling with them felt, risky and also irresponsible to fly from a place where we were having outbreaks here. I had several family members in the hospital, one on a ventilator. It was a very scary time last spring, or in 2020. And so to be able to get fish from our cooperative, to be able to market back here at a time when, like Ben was saying, the shelves were clear of all kinds of proteins, I was very thankful to have the co-op to work with. So we picked up, it was in March when things were starting to lock down. Luckily, we had just sent a load of fish to Boston to a cold storage. And so I was worried that the cold storage would get shut down from a COVID outbreak. So I went and got a few hundred pounds. That would be enough, because we're a very small company. We just started Wooden Island Wild the month before COVID hit. So we were really prepared to scale up to meet the demand. So we got a lot of orders, but we were very small scale through the whole thing. So I was driving around, dropping off boxes on doorsteps to people in my area, which is Boston, Cape Cod, and north of Boston. And we did some trips down to Connecticut. We brought some down to New York City. We were able to provide fish for people in need on a very small scale. So people within our community who we were aware of who needed fish, we dropped it off for them. The co-op luckily did not have any COVID outbreaks up in Sitka. They were very careful. Alaska made out pretty well at the beginning because it is a place where you can social distance very easily. And our cooperative has housing for the workers. We have a lot of people who have worked at the co-op for decades. So we have a really good core crew of workers at the plant. A lot of things went well for the co-op, for our fishermen's co-op through the pandemic. And for me personally, I had to pivot so we skipped our salmon fishing season in 2020 and again in 2021. One reason is that because we weren't able to get up to Sitka, we have a wooden boat. It was built in 1939. And wood boats need a lot of TLC always. So our boat now needs a little bit of work. So we have been able to pivot and start selling fish and start some markets back here, but we've also been really struggling, missing now 2 of our fishing seasons. And with the help of the co-op, I've been able to get fish down here, but it's been difficult to adjust. And here in Massachusetts, I rent a home and I'm in a winter rental, which is really common on Cape Cod. We have a lot of tourists that come in the summer. They want to use their home for 2 weeks or a month or something, but people can live in them for the rest of the year. So we have a housing crisis on Cape Cod where it's very difficult to find long-term housing, and the house prices here, because it was a desirable place, have skyrocketed. So it's been a bumpy ride. There's all kinds of things going on that I don't really know how they'll affect us long-term as a new seafood company. But again, I'm very grateful to be working with our co-op, and the main, like when things were all shut down, it was very helpful to be able to get a little bit on our small scale. And there's, all these different scales of helping people with fish through the pandemic, but I can see potential for our co-op to continue to build these kinds of seafood hubs that are outside of Alaska, where we can work with, we have our great fish from Alaska. I should say it's flash frozen and vacuum sealed at the dock. And then we ship it in bulk slowly. We're very conscious as salmon trollers in Southeast Alaska. Most of our fishermen are very conservation minded. So we're very conscious of our carbon footprint. So the fish is shipped over here very efficiently. And our co-op, the larger, the co-op ships to all 50 states in the US, but they do it out of 2 distribution centers. So our co-op has run into challenges that we as a small kind of branch of co-op members have been able to overcome locally. Even now, our co-op is struggling with a dry ice shortage and transportation issues. We are able to, so when the fish comes to me here, I ship it only places that we can ship via ground, or I deliver it myself. And that's a lot more flexible and resilient than the plan of using distribution or fulfillment centers for the fish. So I think it's showing that it is important to, there are ways to provide fish on a large scale, but some of these smaller scale ways can be most resilient. And we opened up a shop, and again, so the marketing and the shop is going pretty well, but then the fishing has been tough for us to get back up there. A lot of our friends and family who are in Alaska have been doing pretty well. The summer season of 2020 was a really tough one with shutdowns and prices being low. But things have kind of picked back up. There's still a bit of a drag for things like getting our boat fixed. We need some welding done on the rudder post. So it's, that's going to take a while because the welding guy is backed up. So we're seeing things, I feel like I think a lot of, especially as a parent, I feel like a lot of stuff in the US is kind of being forced back to normal, but we're not quite able to do that. We're kind of hanging in there and hoping it works out. And we opened our shop to hopefully create a sustainable seafood hub. So the fish from Alaska is the backbone of it, but we want it to be a place where other fishermen, there's lots of fishermen here in New England, can pop up and also direct market their catch. So here on Cape Cod, our most sustainable fisheries are shellfish, and we have a lot of oyster farmers. So at our shop, the Fisherman's Pantry, which we opened on Cape Cod in June, we've been doing pop-ups with local oyster farmers. So it's a nice way for some local people had been driving out the Cape to pick up scallops and all that, and during the pandemic, which has been great, but it's a hard thing to maintain now that things are getting back to normal. And so we're going to have some scallop fishing friends come do pop-ups on Fridays at the shop. So COVID's created this disruption that has, allowed us to kind of have, I was forced to stay here. So it kind of helped me build these markets and build more relationships here on this end. But there's still a lot of unknowns, and it has been hard to stay put and not go back to Alaska, where our wood boat is just at the dock. We have a friend watching it, but it's just still to be determined how it's really going to shake out and if the demand for our fish will really stick. And one thing that we struggle with a little bit as Alaska fishermen here is that there are local fisheries here, which we actually do participate in the scallop fishery, but we don't have local product that we caught to sell. So we have to figure out the right way to bring our fish here in a way that is not competing with local fishermen. And that's where the shop has been very helpful, as a way that we can kind of have a platform and a space to work together. But again, it's also new, so we're just we're just still kind of feeling our way forward and going with the flow. Yeah.
But very interesting, Tracy. Thank you very much. Sorry, I'm a bit conscious of time, and I've been called to my attention as well. So I do have a few questions for you that I'll leave to the end. I hope some people have put in questions on the chat. Please put questions on the chat if you want to know more from our speakers. Right now, I'm going to move to I think Paula did not manage to join us. It's my understanding. So I will move to Rene Jara, which is a fisher from Chile, so that he lets us know how was his community, his fishery impacted by COVID, and what kind of measures did they put in place to deal with the pandemic. Paula is here, actually. Okay, good to know. So I don't know if Paula or Renee is not here. Whichever one of you wants to actually go first. I would continue with Renee because I called him, but if he's not here, we can jump to Paula, sorry. They're both present. So please put your video on and your sounds, and it would be nice to know your story in Chile. Thank you, Tracy. You don't have your mic on. I don't know. I don't know if it's just me, but I don't hear anything either from Paula or Renee. Paula, I think you need to accept the promotion to being a panelist. You you were not set as a panelist. You need to accept to be a panelist so that we can see you and so that you can speak.
Ahora sí.
Ahora
sí. Me invitaron de otra forma. Hola, hola a todos.
Hi, welcome.
Gracias. Bueno, mi nombre es Paula Leiva. Yo trabajo hace un tiempo en lo que es Mi Caleta. Mi Caleta es una plataforma de e-commerce que tiene además una tienda presencial de venta de productos del mar asociados a la pesca artesanal, que sea de origen legal y responsable. Nosotros nacimos en marzo de este año, comenzamos la operación, por lo tanto no tenemos mucho punto de comparación respecto de una tienda o de una plataforma de e-commerce antes de la pandemia. Trabajamos inicialmente, la idea de Mi Caleta era trabajar solo con organizaciones de pesca artesanal, que fueran cooperativas o sindicatos, pero con el pasar del tiempo se nos hizo muy complicado abastecer, ¿no? Ya que estas organizaciones están en niveles de crecimiento más bien son emergentes recién y no contábamos con que ellos no estaban preparados para una demanda o una demanda un poco más fuerte. Por lo tanto, tuvimos que agregar a nuestro catálogo, por así decirlo, emprendimientos personales, ya sea como los de René, que René tiene su propia planta como pescador solo, o de otras pequeñas pymes familiares que trabajaran en conjunto para poder abastecer, ¿no? Durante este periodo, que son algunos meses ya, hemos tenido una súper buena respuesta de los consumidores. El producto gusta mucho, existe un público que prefiere los productos que vengan de la pesca artesanal por sobre los productos de la industria, que en Chile hay bastante oferta, por decirlo. Entonces, la competencia es dura en ese sentido, pero creemos que cada vez se van uniendo como a este movimiento de preferir productos de pequeñas organizaciones y generar un impacto como positivo en las organizaciones y en las comunidades con las que trabajamos. Asimismo, las organizaciones también están viendo algún beneficio de utilizar estas plataformas o de querer trabajar junto a nosotros, de promocionar sus productos a través de nuestras páginas o de nuestras redes sociales. Y creo que con el tiempo eso, si se logra fortalecer, puede ser muy beneficioso en todo sentido para las organizaciones.
So you are actually a kind of a case that I mean, you didn't start the shop and you didn't start it due to the COVID pandemic, but despite of COVID pandemic, you're doing quite well and you have a lot of customers wanting your product. Actually, your difficulty is you need more. That's good. That's good.
Sí, ha sido una de las dificultades que hemos tenido, que es como paradójico, porque yo inicialmente tenía miedo de la venta del producto. Creo que hemos tenido más demanda de lo que hemos tenido en oferta. Nos ha pasado con algunos pescados que son muy consumidos acá, como la reineta, que es un producto súper masivo, que a la gente le gusta mucho, que llevamos meses sin poder tener reineta, porque bueno, también ha afectado ahora, que es un problema más reciente, el tema de los precios, que han subido mucho, y que ha dificultado un poco la operación. Pero sí, creemos que hay que concientizar, generar campañas de marketing y generar un cambio en el consumo. Si finalmente cambiamos la forma de consumir, el resto ya se va dando solo.
Oh, perfect. That's good to know. And do you think also, just last question, because then I hope people put questions on the chat for you. Do you feel that other small-scale fishing organizations look at you and see a model that can be followed, that they can follow your model because you managed to deal quite well with the pandemic by selling directly to the consumer, by selling online, and by creating this shop?
I'm sorry.
Do you think other fishing associations that are not part of your are looking at you and seeing a model that can be followed in the future?
Claro, sí, creemos que podemos ser un modelo y que ojalá trabajar en conjunto, porque finalmente Mi Caleta es una fundación, no es un negocio, no es una... no buscamos obtener utilidades de esto, lo que sí buscamos es tratar de tener un poco de margen para poder operar y seguir funcionando y no depender siempre de donaciones o de aportes de fuera. Por eso sí tenemos un margen, pero tratamos de que ojalá poder pagar los mejores precios que podamos a los pescadores y también llegar con un buen precio al consumidor final, que es la idea. Fomentar un poco el consumo de eso, y creo que, bueno, paso a paso. Llevamos unos meses, un proceso largo, pero creemos que sí tiene unos efectos positivos.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you very much for your input. I will call your colleague, René Jara Diaz, I think, the fisherman from Chile. I don't know, René.
Ahí está René.
Perfecto. René, do you want to tell us how did the COVID-19 pandemic affected your activity and what you did to mitigate the impact, to cope with this, and what can be continued into the future?
Bueno, hola a todos. No sé si me escuchan. ¿Sí? Ya, qué bueno. Ya, mi nombre es René Jara, soy de Chile, de la 7ª región, región del Maule. Mi caleta está ubicada en una localidad que se llama Duao, donde la pesca es totalmente artesanal. Y bueno, el COVID lo que trajo en principio fue miedo a cómo íbamos a enfrentar esta pandemia, de no saber si íbamos a seguir trabajando, si nuestros productos se iban a comercializar, porque en el conocimiento de que esta pandemia hizo cerrar comunas, regiones, localidades, nosotros no sabíamos si nuestro producto iba a poder seguir saliendo y poder seguir consumiendo, ya que nosotros como pescadores artesanales solamente estábamos haciendo el trabajo de extraer el recurso y no de comercializarlo, porque ese ejercicio lo realizaban otras personas y entonces, bueno, si la pandemia, lo malo que tiene, también tuvimos que sacarle cosas buenas, que fue lo que lo enseñan a trabajar en equipo. Nos enseñó a trabajar en equipo, a poder juntarnos con nuestros compañeros y poder hacer trabajo en conjunto para poder comercializar nuestros productos. Y aquí llegó una gran ayuda, que fue Mi Caleta, que en conjunto nos asociamos, porque si bien nosotros como pescadores sabemos bien la pega de pescar, pero no así de comercializar. No desconocimos canales como vender, eso lo desconocíamos totalmente. Entonces ellos nos brindan la ayuda para poder nosotros vender nuestros productos. Yo personalmente estaba iniciando mi planta de proceso para poder procesar mis productos y darle un valor agregado, que era mi sueño, que quería hacer una cadena más completa. Pero con la pandemia, mis principales proveedores eran, o sea, donde yo iba a llevar mis productos, eran hacer los restaurantes, hoteles, cocinería. Pero con la pandemia se cerró todo, se cerró y ya no sabía cómo salir a vender mis productos. Entonces ahí nace la estrategia con Mi Caleta, de que ellos nos ayudan a vender. Y en eso creamos una cooperativa de pescadores, la cual ya está conformada y estamos realizando nuestros propios procesos. Así, capturamos nuestros recursos, nos procesamos y en ayuda a Mi Caleta los vendimos en distintos lugares. Eso.
Thank you, Rene. Well, I do hope there's questions from the audience, so I will try to move to the questions. Right now, I can see some common trends, the problems with the lack of tourism, or the problems with transportation that several people mentioned, being it transportation of fish, or getting products like ice. Dry ice to be able to deal with your products, the low prices, the problems with low prices. This is a problem that we've been observing all over the world, but also this kind of opportunity and the way that everyone kind of relied on social capital coming together, to working together in cooperatives, or just joining forces and joining efforts to deal with the pandemic. That's a nice message. I think a good thing that come out of a good way to sort the problem was this coming together. I don't know, Elena, if you want to share some questions from the people have put in the chat.
Yes, thank you, Christina. So we have a couple of messages coming in from the chat. We have one specific for Tracy, about from where in the US are fishermen that sell the fish in her cooperative. Are they from Alaska, Massachusetts? And is everything artisanal? And Tracy is now answering in the chat that most of the fishers are from Alaska, and everything is artisanal. Each boat is owner operated, and fishing sustainably with hook and line. I also just wanted to highlight in the chat, we have Javier, who's joining us from Mexico, from a small business called Smartfish. And he stated that they are working directly with co-ops, Mexican small-scale co-ops, and they're selling product to their stores, and that the pandemic was actually good for them. They were able to grow and went from 1 store to 3 stores. I have a question, I think, for all the panelists. So we've heard from everyone, the importance of social cohesion, social capital, working together, but also the emergence, in some cases, the resilience and the strengthening of these more local markets, more local seafood markets. And so my question for the panelists is, moving forward, as our global seafood supply chains, begin to start opening back up, do you see a continued role for these more local seafood markets? And if so, how can consumers and other supply chain actors support these more localized markets moving forward?
I could go. Here on Cape Cod, I've definitely seen consumers shifting to want to support fishermen more and caring a lot more about where their food comes from. Like I touched on, where as Alaska fishermen, we don't have enough people living locally right in Alaska to market all of our fish right there locally. So I'm very focused on trying to find ways to transport fish most efficiently, whether it's, a dream of having some kind of sail freight option, or having more shelf stable options. Flash frozen is a great one, but shelf stable is hopefully even better, or some combination of the two. And I would like, with our shop that we recently opened, to support local fishermen pop-ups. So as much fresh or local stuff coming in right there, but also to have lots of options from ultimately really around the world, anywhere that fishermen are struggling to bring their product to market. I want to use the platform that I have, as I'm lucky to have this co-op here to work with. Our co-op members and our board members are hoping to find ways to, as we move into the future, support new seafood products, whether it be seaweed and kelp products or shelf stable things from around the country. But personally, with the shop, I would like to have local stuff, but also balance it with things that are shipped efficiently from even faraway places, because we have a lot of customers here in New England. We have very population dense a lot of people who can afford it. And as we bring more to market to the people who can afford it, it gives us more flexibility to make it more affordable. In the case of our co-op, we have things like salmon meat that we scrape off of the bones after we have filleted the fish. And for this, so that we have that for some king salmon right now at our shop. And for me, I only have to pay about $6 a pound for that particular fish. And it could probably be even cheaper. But when I sell a portion of king salmon, I have to charge $40 a pound. And I'm paying about 20 a pound. So I'm buying the fish back from my co-op. So you can see how you can get a very wide price range on the same species of fish because we're utilizing what would otherwise be wasted cuts. We're also able to do that with salmon bellies. We smoke them. People love them. It's one of the most nutritious cuts on the fish. And those are also cheaper than a regular just portion of smoked fish. So I'd like to see more offcuts and otherwise wasted trash fish being brought to market in a way that reduces waste and it can be shipped efficiently. So that's shelf stable and frozen. Yeah.
Thank you, Tracy. Ben, your hand is up.
Perfect. So Tracy, we don't say trash fish. There's no trash food. Come on. Unless it's coming across the counter of McDonald's. I'm excited but concerned about our future when it comes to local seafood. So we've actually seen, much as what Tracy's done down in Cape Cod, we've seen a bunch of local markets establish themselves in Maine along our coast. We've seen a huge uptick in seafood consumption, but because our supply chains are not always direct into those marketplaces for local products, we don't always see the connection on the working waterfront to the consumer when it comes to price, right? So we had, there was a place up in the Rockland area in Maine that they said that their sales were up 800% during COVID for seafood sales, right? Yet at the same time, I was telling you guys, we saw a collapse of our price for fish. So there's a disconnect. And some of that comes from just like where they are sourcing from or consumer interest. So, Tracy is in a great spot. Salmon is something that people are comfortable with and want to eat on a regular basis. People are often unsure when it comes to other types of seafood. And so it's those weird fish like monkfish, like redfish, even something like pollock that you can cook in the same way as you cook a haddock or a cod, people just start to step back from. One of the places that we've donated fish to, the soup kitchen in Bath, Maine, they will only take haddock from us, right? So if we try and give them hake, which look exactly the same as haddock when you cut it up, they're like, no, the people here are our friends, our neighbors, they won't take anything but haddock. And so it's those types of things where it's like, how do you break down those barriers to connect the people with the food that's coming across the dock? Even in the pandemic, we have not been able to solve in many places around the United States when it comes to local food consumption. So we've seen a huge uptick in seafood consumption at home. But the price point that people are willing to pay at home is not the same as what the price point is that someone is willing to pay at a fine dining restaurant. And in the United States, 80% of seafood value was consumed at restaurants before the pandemic. And as people started buying and cooking at home, it's, they had more time, they had more capacity, they bought at home, but that price point of what they're willing to pay goes down. And so it does create opportunity though. And like, that's where, value added products, shelf stable products, those type of things can really help. But I think that we're going to see a lot of changes as this continues and takes place. I'm hopeful, but we really have not seen, I don't think some of what we are seeing in the uptick in seafood consumption is always a local consumption throughout the United States. That might be different in some of these other communities that have been presenting, but it's a weird space that we operate in the seafood world. And it's very different when it comes to the consumption of other types of meat and vegetables in our local food systems.
Thanks, Ben. Do any of the other panelists want to respond to this question? I know we probably have to close soon, Christina.
We can have, it would be nice to hear from different experiences in other parts of the world where consumers are different as well. Can't see anybody, so. Does anyone else want to come in? Maritz or Paula, René, or Maria? If not, it's not a problem. I don't know if people are trying to come in or not. Well, I can add a few. This is an interesting issue, and I think Ben is a bit spot on the mark. Is when we're talking about seafood and small scale production, we're always looking at the side of the producer and trying to work with the producer to get this local product into the shelf, into the supermarkets, into the public. But consumers, there's a huge. I come from an European perspective, and we have exactly the same problem in Europe, especially in the north. What do consumers want? And they want 2 or 3 different species, salmon being one of them, and cod being the other one. And then it kind of stops there. And then you go to Southern European markets, and it's more probably closer to what you see in Latin America, where consumers are a bit more open to different species and a bigger range of species that maybe can be more helpful for small scale, for this door-to-door sale and for shortening the value chain in some locations. So this part of the consumer demand really needs a lot of work. Don't know if anyone else is trying to come in. I can't see anybody. I'm really sorry. If not, we also on we're right on track for time to close the event. So if no one else wants to share some perspectives from Latin America, I don't even know if the colleagues are still here or not. I can see René over there, but that's the only person I see in my screen. If no one wants to have a last few words. Oh, Maria, just raise her hand. Please go. Please go.
Hola, sí, muchas gracias por la oportunidad. Sí, definitivamente, gracias por la invitación y por tenernos aquí. Ha sido bastante enriquecedor escuchar cómo en otras partes enfrentaban los retos para la pandemia y cómo se adaptaron y en muchos casos más bien lo vieron como una oportunidad. Nuestros pescadores, por lo menos en Honduras, sí se vieron bastante golpeados en su momento y sobre todo que al principio cuando se cerró completamente cualquier tipo de movilización para comercializar o incluso para faenar en su momento, fue un golpe duro. Entonces, como lo mencioné en su momento, el valor agregado o la belleza colateral de la pandemia, justamente lo mencionábamos ayer, es que vieron la oportunidad de estar organizados, cosa que costaba mucho antes, porque solo habían 3 pescadores en una asociación, o 2 o 5. Vieron ese valor de si estamos en grupo, podemos acercarnos a una planta mayor que nos va a comprar una mayor cantidad de pescado, si es sostenible, si es del tamaño adecuado, porque ha sido un trabajo grande. Las plantas procesadoras de mariscos tienen unas tallas especiales y van de la mano con lo que nosotros queremos como proyecto de una forma sostenible. Entonces se están ajustando, están viendo que es necesario tener todos esos entrenamientos que buscábamos antes dar y que no siempre los miraban necesarios, ahora son necesarios y ellos los solicitan. Entonces, si bien va costando un poco llegar a donde queremos llegar, sí estamos en la dirección correcta y sí se están dando esas oportunidades. Entonces, así como la oportunidad de identificar ahorita con quienes podemos hablar, por ejemplo, la gente de Chile se parece bastante a lo que nosotros estamos trabajando y sería algo bonito poder compartir un poco más con ellos al respecto. Entonces, de nuevo, gracias por la oportunidad en nombre de Maritza, don Germán y por lo menos de la parte aquí en Centroamérica, en Honduras.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you. Basically, well, we are kind of, we need to come to an end. We are right on track to keep this up to time. This is almost a novelty for me. I'm not very good at keeping track of time. So thank you very much to everyone that that participated. I always like to say, I've been in a few of these webinars, I always like to say, we're always saying, oh, now that we're coming out, well, COVID is not over. It will be with us for a long time, unfortunately. And there are lessons to be learned from good examples to follow, success cases, and it's always good, important, and it will continue to be important into the next few years to learn from these good examples that can be copied somewhere else. Some things will work better in some scenarios, some will work better in others, but it's always very good to have this input from everyone to see what works well and where, and what can be copied in different scenarios. And this kind of capacity building and training of people will also be quite important into the future. I would like to thank all our panelists for sharing their experiences and thoughts on the next steps needed to help their lives and livelihoods of communities of small-scale fishers. Special thanks to Micaeta, the Conservation International Mexico, Future of Fish, Oceana, IED, and their partners for contributing videos to this series. As we mentioned at the start of the webinar, there will be a follow-up of the videos and questions and answers and steps forward for the SSF Hub. You can find a link to the discussion and the SSF Hub YouTube in the chat. You can also please go into the SSF Hub and do your profile. Visit us on www.ssfhub.org. Select the green button that says join in the upper right and join the hub and share your stories and learn lessons and good examples. And once again, I would like to thank everyone for sharing their thoughts and experiences, and thank you for the audience for their attendance. I saw 58 people here at once, so that's really nice of all of you to have participated. Thank you very much to everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
And thank you to Elena as well.
And thank you, Christina.
Thank you very much. I hope to see you in the hub, all of you.